Every now and then, I meet someone who's changing the world for the better by their sheer will alone. Whether they're authors, activists, or adventurous, these people are blazing a path with their deep enthusiasm and allowing the world to follow. Their passion is strong, and my passion is to tell their stories. I am Brian Platt, and this is Passion Project. Today I talk with Sam Blount, owner of Front Line Freediving, a dive shop in Wilmington, North Carolina, which specializes in freediving and spearfishing equipment and lessons. I met Sam a few months ago during a spearfishing competition, and I knew that I wanted to chat with him about the science behind freediving and the art of spearfishing. It was a really great episode, and Sam really knows his stuff, and I'm very excited to take a freediving class with him in the future. So, thanks for listening. This is Passion Project. Thanks, Sam, for sitting down with me.
I appreciate you having me. Looking forward to this.
Yeah, for sure. I'm really excited for this one. It's cool. So yeah, let's get started. I've been interested in freediving for a while. I've done it once before to very little success.
Yeah.
But I'd like to do it again. I'd like to, it's really fascinating to me.
Nice.
So let's get started kind of on your background of like how, what were you doing before you opened the shop? What sparked your interest in freediving? Kind of get to know you a little bit better.
Yeah, so before I opened the shop, I was just kind of a recreational Spiro. The first time I really went out was out of Wilmington here, back in probably 2012. I got invited out with some people and went out to Frying Pan Tower. It was my first trip, shot some fish, and kind of been hooked ever since.
Nice. That's awesome.
Yeah,
I've heard a lot about Frying Pan Tower, but
it's a cool place, man. And it's a great spot for newer spear fishermen as well, because it is a little shallower. It is tough conditions, but you do get the chance to progress and shoot some good fish out there.
Oh, cool. Do you know what you caught your first time, or did you catch anything your first time?
The first fish I shot was an African pompano.
Oh, nice. Those are big.
Yeah, it was probably a 30-pound fish.
Wow.
That was my first real fish for sure.
Wow. Yeah, that's impressive.
Yeah,
that's really cool.
It was fun. A lot of learning experiences that trip.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So you went out first, and then you were hooked right away. And then what? Did you start your shop? Did you think about starting the shop then, or?
No, actually, that kind of was a later decision.
Yeah.
I, just sort of treated it like a hobby and went traveling as I could, and dove a lot out of Morehead City and up there a good bit. So then finally moved down here in 2014 to Wilmington and started, going to school, and then I was just diving as much as I could. That summer, I became a free dive instructor and started teaching, kind of traveled wherever I wanted to. I'd list a class. I taught in Wyoming and Costa Rica and a few other places in Florida.
That's so cool.
So when, kind of came time to make a life decision, I decided to open the shop, or, it's kind of between opening the shop or going back to school, and decided to open the shop.
Yeah, it's kind of a no-brainer.
Yeah. It wasn't a tough decision.
Yeah, seriously. Wyoming, interesting. Obviously, there's desire for people to do it all over the place, but that's not the first place you think of.
Yeah, no, and it was amazing. You're diving at like 6,000 feet, so you do a 40-foot dive and it feels like a 60-foot dive or 80-foot dive.
Oh, interesting.
But one of the lakes I would dive in, you'd pop up and the Tetons would be right behind you. So Grand Teton's like 2 mountains over, and then you have some of the smaller ones right in front of you. It was at Jenny Lake out there.
It must have been surreal.
Yeah, it was awesome. And then, we even dove the Snake River. So we put in kind of where the fishermen started. And we swam down the river just drifting and, going through rapids. And it was a blast.
Wow. How deep does that get?
I think the deepest we ever went in the river was like 16 feet. But it's just crazy to be in a fast-moving river.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah, it was fun.
Well, cool. So it sounds like you could have opened your shop anywhere. Why did you choose Wilmington out of anywhere else?
I moved here for a few reasons. I wanted to be in the South, and the spearfishing here is pretty amazing.
Yeah.
It's tough. It is rough a lot of times. It is a little deeper diving, but it's kind of worth it. And then there's nothing really in the area. So, kind of between Georgia and Boston, there's not a ton of competition. And so that was sort of one of the other aspects that brought me here.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
It's I saw a few videos online of like and I'm completely new, but just like the sheer size of what you can catch off the coast it's pretty remarkable. Yeah. Yeah. So what have you seen off the coast of Wilmington, or just North Carolina in general, that you might not see anywhere else, or you see in bigger sizes or more volume? Or
our hogfish population's really healthy. African pompano are really healthy, and those are the two that kind of stand out if you compare to like Virginia or Florida, kind of go in either direction. But it's an amazing place. We're sort of the northern boundary for a lot of southern fish like black grouper, and then we're also the southern boundary for a lot of northern fish, which is like tautog and striped bass and some cold water fish.
Oh, nice.
So it's a really interesting location. We have massive spiny lobster. My biggest so far is like 15 pounds.
Wow.
Compared to the normal half pounders you get down in South Florida.
Yeah. You I met you with the spear-diving competition. Mm-hmm. And one of the categories was spiny lobsters. Yes. And I think one of them I saw was like but 8 pounds. Mm-hmm. It was huge.
Yeah, I'd call 6 to 8 pounds probably our average here.
Yeah.
My buddy Mark just got a 13 pounder this past year. So.
Holy cow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen videos of people picking those up, and they seem like they're just so powerful when they try and get away from you. Yeah,
they definitely can be. When Mark grabbed that 13 pounder, he said it pulled him into the ledge as he was trying to pull it.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, they're all muscle. Mm-hmm. That whole tail is just muscle.
Yeah, and then, they're under a crack, and their legs at that point are, kind of similar to king crab legs.
Okay, yeah.
So they just stand up in there and lock themselves in.
Yeah, and I mean, the name would imply that they're really, you have to wear gloves, right? They're really spiny.
I would recommend it.
Yeah. Sure. Yeah. So in addition to Wilmington, you mentioned other places, but where else have you been spearfishing that you really liked?
I like some of the more remote places in the Bahamas.
Yeah.
Costa Rica was nice. Kind of a totally different environment down there.
Yeah.
Spearing in Wyoming was actually a blast. Diving in some of those clear lakes up there.
Yeah.
Out there you can shoot game fish in Wyoming. It just has to be in standing water. So lakes or ponds are okay.
Oh wow.
And it was pretty neat to shoot some fish out. Like walleye was my first freshwater fish out there.
Oh wow. Is there any difference between freshwater and saltwater spearfishing?
Yeah, the freshwater stuff's a lot shallower generally. Mm-hmm. The fish are going to be, they're not as easy to predict, I think. Or at least, I only did it once, so I didn't spend a ton of time out there. But it was very different than saltwater spearfishing. The way I did stuff to call in fish that would work in saltwater but didn't seem to work very well in freshwater.
Oh, wow. What do you mean calling fish?
Like grouper calls, you can make kind of a grunting noise, something like that. Or you can scratch the ground or play with rocks, kind of grind rocks together.
Wow. And
if you look down at the sand below you and scratch some rocks together, a lot of times when you pick your head up, there will be fish kind of coming in close to you.
Wow. I had no idea.
Yeah, fish are real intuitive with eye contact. So if you were to stand in front of someone and square your shoulders and look at them, it seems aggressive. And fish respond to that the same way. They know where you're looking, and they'll, as soon as you look at a fish, you'll see them start to turn away.
Wow. So you automatically call them, and then immediately you have to.
Not necessarily immediately. You just got to work on your body language. If you kind of see one out of the corner of your eye and you turn real quick and start swimming towards it, it's going to, react to that and start moving away. But if you kind of pick a point in the distance or 10 feet in front of the fish and you both kind of meet there, that's going to generally have a lot more success.
Gotcha. Wow. That's interesting. So yeah, when I went, there was, we didn't see anything really. But we eventually got a flounder. So that was a little bit cheating, We dove down and saw it move, and then we were able to shoot it.
Was that here?
No, that was in the Philippines. And
cool.
It was really random. But we ate it, and then we found a clam or something that we ate too. Nice.
Hey, it's good you got something. From what I hear, it's pretty overfished, especially near population centers there. So.
Yeah. Actually, when we went down a few times, you could hear explosions in the distance.
Oh, yep.
I heard that was like dynamite fishing.
Yep, they do dynamite fishing. I think they use cyanide. They even pump that into the reef, and so all the fish die in there.
Wow.
Pretty wild kind of stuff they do over there.
I didn't know that. Yeah, that it was definitely a lot of it was barren. You could see a lot of rubble. Mm-hmm. And I did some good dives there too. Nice. Scuba diving. They were like thresher sharks, which was great.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, that was really cool. But that was in a different. There's 9,000 islands, I think. So there's tons of islands. That was in a completely different island. But yeah, it was definitely a different experience.
Yeah, that's great.
Well, cool. So in addition to like being a great spearfisher, you're also a really good photographer. Do you have a favorite place to photograph? Do you have a favorite fish or?
Not necessarily. I really enjoy capturing kind of people's best experiences. You know, like so the other day playing with the dolphins, you know, a couple of the guys that were there had never seen a dolphin, really played with a dolphin in the water before.
Where were you?
We were 40 miles out, or 50 miles out, I guess.
Wow.
We were out in the Gulf Stream, and you know, the Atlantic spotted dolphins aren't very playful usually, but this time, you know, we dolphin kicked and did some spins and flips and whatnot, and they came in and started playing with us for about an hour.
Wow.
So I had a lot of time to interact, and it was pretty cool being studied. Like, you can tell they're trying to figure you out and playing with you, and so it's cool. You know, the Bahamas is always nice. Like, the cleaner the water, the easier it is to take better pictures.
Yeah.
You know, there's less particles. You can shoot a little further away. But I guess probably my true passion with underwater photography, I don't know why, but I really love group photos on shipwrecks.
Oh, cool.
You know, it gives you a chance to tell the story of the wreck, but also just, you know, hanging out with your buddies on a shipwreck.
It's fun. I've seen a few of those photos.
Yeah.
I think it was you. I couldn't really tell from the picture, but with you know, everyone's sitting on the side of a shipwreck, which is really cool.
Yeah.
How deep are those wrecks around here?
Our shallowest wreck, I think, is about 25 to 30 feet to the top, and then all the way out to, you know, there's some in a couple hundred feet. So.
Wow. Oh.
You know, we dive the ones out to like 120 feet are kind of the consistent ones we'll hit, the blue water wrecks.
Wow. You were mentioning with the dolphins, did you call them? Were they there already? Was there
so they were kind of swimming by, and it was interesting because a bunch of, you know, false albacore swimming by. You could kind of see them down there, and all of a sudden we started hearing clicks, and I don't know, one was following the other, or, you know, the dolphins were chasing the tuna. But yeah, they kind of kept their distance, and then I dipped down and started doing some dolphin kicks and did a spin, and all of a sudden the whole pod came racing in, and then they stayed with us for about an hour.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, the guys spearfishing were getting pretty upset because the dolphins would dive down with the hunters and kind of sit next to them, and so none of the fish were around when that was happening.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, they seem pretty curious too.
Yeah, they're cool animals.
Yeah. Sure. I've only gone diving with them, and they happen to be in the area once, but definitely not curious, and they just, you're never going to keep up with the dolphins. So.
That was only the second time, you know, any of us had experienced that. So
how, what is the temperature? I mean, right now it's kind of late October. What's the temperature in the Gulf Stream?
Oh, it was 82, I think.
Wow.
Or 80, something like that.
Yeah.
Pretty warm. And I mean, you know, 2 years ago we went out in December, and, you know, we were chipping ice off the boat, but once we got out there, it was, you know, 80-degree water, and the air was 75.
Wow.
You know, that Gulf Stream running up from Florida just brings a lot of hot water up for us.
That's wild.
Yeah.
So, do you still wear a wetsuit then, or is it?
So, you know, as free divers, I don't know if you got into kind of the mammalian dive reflex in your class.
No.
But our body reacts to submersion in water the same way a whale or seal or dolphin's body does. We get, you know, our heart rate can slow down by as much as 50%. So your resting heart rate can drop by, you know, into the 30s and 40s. You get blood shunting or blood shift, similar to when you get cold. So your blood shifts down into your core, keeping that blood where you want it instead of using it for your extremities. Wow. If you've ever been in the pool or in the water and you notice you have to use the restroom a good bit more, that's actually your dive reflex. Your body is shunting blood into your core, which makes your kidneys think there's too much fluid, and so they try to flush.
Wow, interesting.
And there's a bunch of other things that, you know, kind of come from that, but they allow us to do these, you know, ridiculously deep dives, especially for like competitive free divers.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the 130 meters is like the deepest dive now.
Wow.
Pretty wild.
Yeah, seriously. I went, again, just scuba diving, and I think I was at maybe 40 meters. And I was proud of that.
Nice.
So 130 is ridiculous.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah. So for someone just getting into freediving and spearfishing, what would you recommend?
So there's sort of two routes you can take. The route I took was kind of the slow and very unsafe route. So, you know, we started spearfishing. We would run out, and, you know, we got to the point where we were spearfishing 80 feet. We were, you know, doing incredibly with no safety. You know, very, very dangerous.
Yeah.
And there's the way that I wish I had done it. And I would always recommend a freediving class, or at a minimum, find a buddy who's taken a class and learn the safety from them. So, when you go to take a free dive class, take your time and pick out a good instructor. My first class, I flew all the way down to Fort Lauderdale, Florida, to take a class with Ted Hardy, simply because he had such a good reputation, especially on the safety side. And that long term has sort of bled into my classes, I think. Like we were just talking about, safety really is what I truly care about.
Yeah.
We spend a lot of time on technique and, breathing and all that stuff, but the biggest thing is staying safe.
Yeah.
From there, there's some great YouTube or YouTube videos you can watch. Adam Stern or Adam Freediver on YouTube. He's put out a ton of great information. How to breathe properly, how to do safeties, how to perform rescues. And it's good to find someone that's doing that right. There's a lot of bad information out there, so make sure you pick and choose your sources.
Yeah.
Makes sense. From there, it's getting out there and actually diving. There is some dry land training you can do, apnea walks, diaphragm stretches, CO2 and O2 tables. But really the best thing you can do is just get out there and spend some time offshore with good dive buddies.
Yeah, it seems like safety is just such a huge concern here. Because I don't know. I mean, there's so many things that could go wrong.
Yeah.
So it's one of the biggest things to make sure you've got a good instructor, at least a good background.
Yeah, and then also picking your dive buddies.
Yeah.
I've sort of gotten to the point where I've instituted a zero tolerance policy. So if I catch someone doing a dive alone, they're on the boat for the day.
Oh, wow.
And, the thing about the sport is it's very, very safe. If you do it right and have a good safety who understands that their sole job is you're their sole responsibility. Mm-hmm. So like if their dreamfish swims by, they can't shoot it. They have to focus on making sure you're safe during your dive. Complacency is sort of an easy thing to fall into. I just saw my first blackout after, 7 years of hard diving. Wow. And, I've been an instructor. I've, taught classes all over. And this was the first time I've ever experienced that.
Wow.
But 7 years later, I needed to be prepared when I took my class. So like it could be 7 years, it could be 50 years before you see a blackout. But every single dive, you have to be ready and prepared for it.
Yeah, that's another thing that's probably pretty, got to be pretty stressful. Is that could happen to anyone. At any point if you're not doing it right. So
yeah, and that's it. The mentality of your dive buddies is key. If you have a buddy that's super gung ho and is going to leave you if a fish swims by, don't dive with him. He's not going to have your back if something goes wrong.
Right.
But find guys that care. Find guys that never want to have to explain to your family what happened, and those are the guys that you should dive with. Yeah.
I was looking into, obviously I looked in a lot of dive shops, but your Front Line Freediving was very highly regarded in terms of safety. There's a lot of reviews talking about how important this is to you, how seriously you take it. So that's really important. Yeah. I also read that you have these trauma kits that doesn't sound like you've had to use much, which is great.
Yeah, it's actually kind of been awesome. I tell people when they buy one, I hope it's the biggest waste of money they ever spend. So, one thing with trauma kits I noticed is they're all hard to travel with. They're all Pelican cases or they're organized in bags or, however it is. So we made a dry bag, 10-liter dry bag, so there's some extra room in there. And everything's organized in this roll-out sleeve. So each item has a pocket. And we start from most severe, working our way down to, Band-Aid style injuries.
Yeah, okay.
So we start with massive bleeding. So we start with a tourniquet and a hemostatic gauze, working our way down. We even have a splint in there. So, if you broke your arm or whatever, you could splint it up.
Yeah.
There's even burn dressing. So if you're on a remote island somewhere and you step in a hot fire pit the next day and you burn the bottom of your foot, you've at least got something there.
Everything.
I designed it after the IFAC or the individual first aid kit we used in the military.
Cool.
And so that's sort of where a lot of the stuff came from.
Yeah. I was going to say it's definitely, especially spearfishing, safety is probably a huge concern too.
Yeah.
It's good that you've covered all the bases and hopefully, never have to use those.
Yeah.
Those trauma kits.
I hope I never see them used.
Yeah. So you kind of alluded to it, but you were in the Marines for nearly 4 years, right? So, was there anything you learned there that helped you, with freediving or with opening a shop or with instructing or?
I would say the biggest things are, the instruction. So I'd already been comfortable teaching, some classes, the medical side. And then the biggest thing is, we always talk about complacency kills. And it really seems to go like that in every, action sport or anything like that, where you kind of do put your life on the line. If you're a base jumper and you don't pack your chute right, you got complacent, now you're going to smack the ground or something.
Right, so. Yeah, that makes sense. It makes perfect sense for freediving.
Yeah, I think so.
So I kind of alluded to it earlier, but a big initiative for you, it seems like, is the Front Line. At Front Line is the Carolina Lionfish Derby. Is that something you started about last year, right?
Yeah, I started it last year. Unfortunately, we had terrible weather, so I think I'm going to move it sort of into the summer of this year. What I had hoped is that it would get people excited for grouper opening in May.
Yeah.
Lionfish are an invasive species that have bloomed into this massive issue. They're breeding rapidly. They eat a ton of food.
Yeah.
And they're everywhere. I think New York to Brazil now. Wow. In the Atlantic, and there's no natural predators, which is the issue.
Yeah.
So then, a lot of places are trying to train, big snapper and grouper and sharks and eels to eat the lionfish because they are venomous.
They're trying to train them?
Mm-hmm. Like I was in Belize last year, and we would shoot the lionfish, and the guys would find a nurse shark or something like some other predator, and they would try and feed the lionfish to it to teach them to eat those fish. That's the hope.
Wow. Are they poisonous?
They're venomous. They have, I think it's 4 of their fins. The dorsal, the pectoral, and the anal fin have spines in them that inject venom.
Wow.
So, if you bump into them, generally you'll get a hit. And it is heat soluble. So if you do ever get one, if you can take, heat up some water as hot as you can stand it and pour it on there.
Oh, wow.
Or, heat packs, whatever you can do, it'll help kind of break up that toxin.
Yeah, they're not incredibly dangerous to humans from what I've read.
I think there's been a few people that, some older folks that may have had some cardiac arrest from it and stuff, but generally it's just a lot of pain. Wow.
Okay. That's interesting. So what made you want to do that? Was that kind of your idea? Did you borrow that from somewhere else?
There's a lot of them all over the country. Yeah. In the Bahamas, the Caribbean, I think there's people putting them on kind of everywhere. And then just last year, I started to notice a lot more.
Wow. Okay.
And so, figured something we can all do as a community to hopefully make our waters a little better long term.
So, and I could be wrong, but they're actually pretty good eating, right?
Oh, they're delicious.
Really?
Yeah. Everything from raw to cooked, they're tasty every way I've had them.
Wow, that's awesome. Yeah, count me in for the next time you do that.
Will do.
I often notice that divers are oftentimes naturalists. I mean, you've got to, obviously love where you are, appreciate what you're seeing every day. Mm-hmm. Is there any species you don't go after when you're spearfishing? Is there any kind of thing you avoid based on declining populations?
So there's not a lot of that happening here, sort of to the critical level, as far as I understand. Now, this could be wrong. The red grouper population, I think, has gotten a little slim. So I know a lot of guys are starting to kind of pass up the red grouper and let them live.
Oh, interesting.
But other than that, everything seems to be pretty healthy. We don't like to overtake. A lot of times we won't hit a spot more than once, 3 times a year. So we try to move around and spread out the pressure that we're putting on the fish.
Gotcha. Well, that's awesome. So I see you're leading the way in the Brian Davis Artificial Reef Project. It's a great initiative for a friend that actually passed away in the summer of 2017. How did the project come about, and what are you most excited about with it?
I'll start with what I'm most excited about. Honestly, just being able to dive that wreck with my buddies. I think it's going to be a special thing. Mm-hmm. It sort of came about, it's probably within 3 days after he passed. It might have been a day or two. I think people mourn differently, and we were all just sitting around, and I can't remember who said it, but they were like, why don't we sink a ship? And this was sort of inspired by a group of guys who lost another friend a few years ago. I can't remember exactly, but they sank the ship 10 or 11 years ago. Wow. It's called the Greg Mickey. It's out by Frying Pan Tower. Wow. It's some of those wreck photos you've seen were on that wreck. Okay. So they were sort of our inspiration, I guess. And just our whole little crew decided we were going to do it, and raised some money and been bugging the state for the last year and a half, I guess, year and a few months.
Right.
So finally, 2 weeks ago, we finally got the approval. So they're going to sink, we're going to donate the money, and then they're going to help fund and do the process. And they're going to sink the ship somewhere between July 2019 and June 2020. So that's sort of the project dates.
Yeah, that's incredible.
Yeah, it's,
Yeah, I'm sure that's a great, I'm sure I'd really appreciate that. Yeah, I've never met him, but Brian seemed like a really cool guy.
Yeah.
Very into free diving. He was the founder of the UNCW charter of the Spearfishing Club. For those that didn't know him, myself personally, what would you say about him?
No, he was just a genuinely good dude. He's one of those guys that's just always smiling, always happy. Usually he brought a lot of happiness to wherever he was, I would say.
Yeah.
He was an awesome enough dude that, the whole community, scuba, free dive, everybody came together, and it's kind of been amazing to see since then.
Yeah.
He affected a lot of people, I'd say.
Yeah, that's great. That's an incredible way to, remember him. Well, cool. About, what is your personal best in, free diving? How deep have you gotten? What is like a good day of free diving for you?
My deepest dive's 140 feet, and my longest static's 506.
Wow.
5 minutes, 6 seconds. I personally don't like statics. And then the one downside of North Carolina is to get depth, we have to run quite a ways. So we don't get the opportunity to just free dive deep very often. Generally, when we head out there, when we run 60 miles, we're all wanting to shoot wahoo or do some spearfishing out there. So it's not too common we get to do that here.
Wow, and you said 145?
140.
140. Wow, that's insane.
Yeah.
That's wild. How long did that take you? How many years of practice did that take you?
I haven't really been training depth or anything. Mm-hmm. I just sort of like spearfishing a little deeper.
Okay, yeah.
And so that's, we were always spearfishing, 60 to 100, 120 feet sometimes.
Yeah.
And so, when I finally got to, not have a spear gun and not be worried about, body language and all this stuff, I was just focused on staying relaxed and doing a free dive.
Gotcha.
It kind of all came together, I guess. I'm hoping this year or next year I'll have an opportunity to really do some free dive training and kind of see where I can take it.
Yeah, that would be really cool.
Yeah.
Well, cool. Yeah. So, what's your favorite thing that you've caught? Thing you're most proud of that you've?
That's a good one.
Or the thing that comes to mind first.
I guess the thing that came to mind was probably my biggest fish or my first fish.
First was the AP.
First
right?
was the AP.
Yeah.
And it was a really sharky day, and so
Sharky day.
So the sharks were really active.
Oh wow!
So we were actually diving in threes. So one person would shoot a fish, and then the other two people would take turns swimming down to protect that fish while you were fighting it. Wow. So they'd go down and poke some sharks, keep them away.
Wow!
So that was either that or I was spearfishing off Moorhead with a good buddy,
mm-hmm.
And he actually runs Beyond Free Diving up there. He's another really good instructor. But we were out, and my girlfriend at the time popped up, and she said there was a few sharks down there. And so, I dove down, and these sharks, which ended up being cobia, swam out from under this ledge, and it was probably the biggest fish to date I've seen in the water. And, closed the gap and put a shot into it, and pretty spectacular battle, if you will.
So what happens, if that's super deep down, what happens, is there any point you have to surface? And
Yeah, so, as free divers, our biggest concern is breathing or getting back to air.
Right.
So we use two methods. There's a float and float line where either your gun or your shaft is connected to a floating rope, essentially, to a float. So you shoot the fish, you either leave the gun if it's, in line, or if it's a breakaway rig, you hold onto your gun and swim to the surface.
Wow, okay.
And then from there, you can start fighting the fish.
Right, okay.
While it's dealing with the buoy, you're heading up to the surface. And then there's another method which is a little less safe, but usually more convenient, and that's using a reel. So that's generally my preferred method, but you do have to be careful. Line management comes into play a lot. It's easy to get tangled up, and if you're fighting a big fish, you get tangled up, it drown you or drag you under.
Wow.
So it is something you need to be careful of. So with the reel, think of it more like a fly fishing reel. So it's for line storage, not necessarily for fighting the fish like a fishing reel. Mm. So you shoot the fish, and either way, you swim straight to the surface. Some people will go and like swim towards the fish or try to grab the fish. Personally, I'd rather breathe. Right. So I'd head up for air and then start fighting the fish from there.
Wow, interesting. And how long, let's say that cobia, how long did that take you to reel in?
When you have a lot of adrenaline flowing through your body, time sort of warps.
Yeah.
But I'd call it 15 to 20 minutes, maybe.
Wow.
I'm not too sure on that though.
Were you exhausted after that?
Yeah.
Because you're treading water and you're...
So you're fighting the fish, you're treading water, and then you go to grab the fish and it just beats you up more.
Right.
And then so finally I was able to bleed it, and so it started to slow down, and then eventually I have no idea how long it was, but finally got it in the boat and caught a catch.
Yeah, that sounds about as sustainable as it gets. Like there's no way you can do that all day every day.
Yeah, no, definitely not. And it is talking about sustainability. You're picking out just the fish you want. You're not catching anything else.
No bycatch.
Yeah, there's no bycatch. It's just you're picking out single fish, and that's what you take home and cook and share with your friends.
Yeah. Well, cool. Well, I'm excited to start taking classes with you and hopefully learn how to free dive and spearfish a little bit. I think that'd be really cool.
It's gonna be awesome. Looking forward to introducing you to the waters here.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Sam. I really appreciate you sitting down with me. This has been super insightful, and I'm excited just to keep learning more.
Awesome. I appreciate it. Thanks for taking the time.
Yeah, for sure. Take care.